ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the Louisiana General Office, 2013 Council President, Sam Hebert.
Good afternoon. This is amazing. Now, you take the first step and you never know where you're going to end up. I can remember when I was just starting out as an agent, and my biggest dream was to make $3,000 a month. You know, I worked on my 3 L's. I looked, I listened, and I learned, and I grabbed all the insight that I could. And now I'm here standing before all of you, the industry's most successful agents, in front of Ted, Mark, and all the guys and gals who run one of the most successful companies in the world. Not bad, way more than I expected when I signed my contract. You know. I changed my comments about our council vice president, Donna, after I heard her talk yesterday. I seem to do that at every speech. You know, Donna has worked on her career with an intensity I don't normally see. And she has done this with personal and professional trials that might have crumbled other people. And I'm so inspired by her character and her ability to persevere. And I'm looking forward to watching her business blossom. So Donna, would you please stand so we can congratulate you? What a great speech yesterday. I wish my dad could see me so I could thank him. You know, he had his hands full raising me, you know, and I'm a very, very lucky guy, and in more ways than you might imagine. And I'm not saying becoming a council president was just luck. There was way too much work. But the fact that I am still alive today, that's really a miracle. I've had so many close calls, and not even counting the dumb, dangerous things I did as a teenager. So let me share some of them with you. When I was in my 20s, I fell off a 40-foot tall structure. Fell on the back of my pickup truck, passed out. And right before I was going out, I said, you know, this must be over. I'm done. You know, I'm going to be crippled up. I woke up a few hours later, jumped up, realized everything was okay, just went back to work like nothing happened. Not long after that, I was in Colorado on an elk hunting trip up in the mountains, and no one was with me that day. And the weather suddenly turned bad. And I found myself lost in a blinding snowstorm. And it really scared me. You know, I'm from Louisiana, swampland. We're not used to snow. And I remember the advice someone told me about surviving a blizzard. They said, so I was looking to dig a hole and ride out the snow, ride out the storm. And I eventually found my way back that afternoon. But there was an angel involved, for sure. And then less than a year after that, I went on another trip in the mountains hunting. And this time with a couple of buddies. And one of the guys got careless with his rifle. Had a 7mm rifle, and the gun went off, went right by my head. But I had hair down to here, and it just whizzed right by. I got lucky again. Around the time my son was to be born, I was walking in a bank, going to cash a check, minding my own business. That's what I told my mama, you know. And I got caught in the middle of a bank robbery. And before I know it, I'm hogtied, thrown on the floor with a gun cocked to the back of my head. They repeated that a couple times, but they ran out of the door with the money. They were soon caught, and I said, whew, went back to work. Just crazy. Oh, and this is the craziest one. You know, I was in an inner tube, like the kids do in the Gulf of Mexico, just swimming past the surf, just minding my own business, playing around, and all of a sudden I see a wire sticking up out the water in the middle of nowhere. So I grab the wire, it's kind of weird, I pull it up, and there's a shark's head. And I said, how cool. You know, somebody chopped the head off of a shark, the teeth, I was going to make a necklace, you know, looking at it. But then all of a sudden, you know, I'm moving it around, and this thing started wiggling. And I realized it wasn't a shark's head, it was a whole shark. And I'm just waking him up, it was shaking him awake. You know, he had broke his line and he was hanging there half unconscious. And so, you know, I let go of that, and I realized my behind is in the inner tube. And so I raise my behind up and my hands and feet hit the water. And I said, oh no, and I do that a couple of times and I freeze and I realize I must look like a turtle to this shark. So I said a Hail Mary, I said a prayer and just swam back to shore. Everything was good. Well, I think you get the idea of some of the situations I seem to always get myself into. I've even been thrown out of a boat twice. And once while scuba diving, I passed out and sank to the ocean floor. And my brother spotted me from in the murk, about 60 foot down, bubbles coming through the murk. He reached down, pulled me up, brought me to the boat. Everything was okay. So I am lucky to be here. And I think my guardian angel had to work overtime just like my father did. You see, I spent most of my childhood getting into trouble and rebelling against all forms of authority. And at age 17, I left my house, my parents' home, and maybe I was pushed a little bit, you know. I had 20 years of hard jobs, backbreaking labor, and long hours. And a lot of these early years were spent in the petrochemical plants of Southwest Louisiana. It was dangerous work. You know, I was badly burned 2nd and 3rd degree 2 different times. And a couple of my coworkers weren't as lucky as me. But it was a steady paycheck. And I had a new family to support. And I didn't really know what else to do. And my wife, Denise, was my biggest supporter. And when I mentioned to her at age 24 that I'd like to try something different, she said, whatever you want to do. She encouraged me. And I made a deal with her. You know, I said, give me 10 years to do whatever I want. And if you're not happy, and I'm not making the money I'm giving up here, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And I married her when I was 20, and we raised 3 children together. 2 of them are here today. We recently, just a week or 2 ago, celebrated our 34th anniversary. I still don't know what she saw in me, but I'm grateful she did. Denise, would you please stand up so I can acknowledge you and thank you for loving me. It hadn't been easy. After I left the plant, I made and installed lighted signs, and I became a master sign electrician. And that's what put me on top of that 40-foot sign that I fell from. I also started a small construction company, building fences, remodeling homes, anything I could do to make money. And for a time, I had a lot of work. But the funny thing was that no matter how much money I had, I never seemed able to keep it. And until that point in my life, I'd not listened to anyone's advice but my own. And I finally had to admit that I might not be the best life coach, you know. And so, for the first time in my life, I began looking outside for guidance. I read books, I attended seminars, and anything to change the course of my life. And one of the biggest influences for me was a guy named Wayne Dyer. And in his book, The Power of Intention, he wrote something that summed up what I needed to do. He said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it turned out to be true. And I still use that wisdom today. Another was Steve Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He had a similar quote about changing the world around you. And here's a story that explains what it means. Say you're getting on a train, you had a long day's work, you're tired, you're aggravated. You sit down just to take a break, rest, hopefully take a nap on the way home. And all of a sudden, these 5 kids walk in. Guy with the dad plops right next to you, like he doesn't even see the kids. The kids runs around. They're making all kind of noise, bumping into people, spilling their cold drinks. You're getting aggravated, you know. Hey, do something about your kid, you're thinking. And finally, you get mad. And you stand up and you go over to the guy and say, hey, what's your problem? You know, something like that. And he looks up at you and he's got a tear in his eye. And he says, I'm sorry. I just came from the hospital. My wife died. I don't really know what to do. Immediately, you know, you change the way you look at the situation. And all of a sudden you have compassion and you're not mad anymore. You know, change the way you look at things and create a better story. And I took that advice to heart. And I began to ask myself, how am I seeing the world and how is that serving me? What stories, truths do I have that don't bring me peace or get me what I want? How am I self-destructing my possibilities? I became a sponge, a student of life. I couldn't believe the things I was learning. And I discovered that just by changing my beliefs and hearing what others had to say, I could become more effective and more capable of achieving excellence. And as I changed the way I thought and the way I looked at the world, positive things began to happen to me. There was a guy in Lake Charles named Don Ash, whom I've known for a couple of years. He had a job as a trainer with New York Life, and he saw something in me. And when I spoke to Don about possibly becoming an agent, he mentioned to me that there was an agent in his office making $1 million a year. And I met this agent. He was articulate, suave, and debonair, like a lot of you guys out here. Highly educated. So after meeting him, I sat there and said, there's no way I could be like that, you know? Then I started thinking, I can't even be half as good as that guy. But I started doing the math, and I said, I think I can be 20% as good. And 20% of $1 million is $200,000 at that time. That was a fortune. So I signed my contract with New York Life in 1995. And I immediately realized that none of my previous job experiences prepared me for this career. And an example of that is my carpenter's wardrobe. You know, a pair of cargo shorts and a Fat Cat t-shirt might not be suitable. You know? Plus, I'd never used a computer, and it was 1995. And when I was working late at night trying to pass all these tests, and the computer froze, I had no idea how to restart it. Didn't know if it was me or the computer. If I owned it, it would have been thrown out the door. You know, it was very upsetting. On the other hand, my previous job experiences did equip me with certain skills. I was told that the first year or two in an agent's career were the hardest, but honestly, I couldn't see any hardship. No toxic chemicals, no dangerous power tools, no standing on a roof changing shingles in the hot Louisiana sun. You know, all I had to do was talk to people, and something that I always like to do. I've been hearing the word no all my life. And so, unlike a lot of people new to sales, I never worried about it or took it personally. I'd read a book. The book was called The Four Agreements, and it says, always do your best, be impeccable with your word, never make assumptions, most importantly, never take anything personal. I knew I was tough enough to work here. I just had to get a lot smarter, you know. So I started trying to be more creative with new marketing ideas. Like the time I got the bright idea, taking my business cards and stuffing it in toilet paper rolls in the restrooms. Of course, this may not have been the branding position New York Life was looking for. Along those same lines, I would go to drive-through windows and tape my cards to the bank drive-through windows and ATM machines. And, you know, that was a good idea until the banks called and said, knock it off, you know. And then I wanted to expand myself, you know, get to the rich people, the high net worth people, right? And so every time I walked by a Mercedes-Benz in a parking lot, I would drop a card on the ground so when they come to open their door, they would see it and that'd be their sign to call me, the Foxworthy sign. Of course, these are not the strategies that made me council president. But hey, you got to start somewhere. And by taking any action, I felt empowered and in control of my destiny. You know, and fortunately, there were people in the company who were ready to help me. And I spent my life not listening or learning from anyone, but now I was in an environment with trainers, managing partners, and other agents who were willing to teach me and support me. And I spent a lot of time watching these people and listening to what they had to say. And strangely enough, I followed their advice, you know. And I realized there was a natural market for me. And these were the men and women who worked at the petrochemical plants. I knew these people, I spoke their language. I understood what it was like to do their work and work long hours. And many of these people were near or in retirement. It was not unusual for them to have 15 to 20 times their annual income in their 401k accounts. These were people who worked hard and saved a lot. They needed the right advice, the right financial tools to give them a chance to better chance of taking care of their family. So I started trying to get in front of these guys to come in and talk to me. I made requests to friends and family to support me by referring people who were in a position to roll over money. And once I got in front of them, we would start talking about rollovers, often annuities and mutual funds, and then talk about life insurance and other concepts. I was still very wet behind the ears, but the guys in the GO would say, you catch the fish and we'll cook it for you. And in other words, you don't have to worry about how to implement the plan. We'll hold your hand through that. You know, and when I brought my prospects in, the sales manager was true to his word, and they sat down and basically sold the case for me. And I'll never forget my first case. I've been in the business 6 months, and I made more money from that one case than I thought I'd make all year. Now, between me and you, I didn't know what took place. You know, they were shaking my hands, giving me apps, saying thank you. I go, here's the money. You know, it was wonderful. I was so fortunate to go into a business with a partner I can trust and my clients can believe in. That's New York Life. When a client tells me that New York Life's annuity interest rate is a little lower than this company or that, or that they have a better, cheaper life product somewhere else, I tell them to stop and think about it. It's not because the other insurance company is kind-hearted. More likely, it's what Louisiana fishermen call stink bait. It smells bad, but it's such a powerful lure that it makes the catfish less cautious than normal. So I advise my clients, is there some risk the other company is asking you to ignore? I tell them why I believe in New York Life and why I really think it'll be the last company standing. I also explain that my job is not to make the largest amount of money in the shortest period of time. My job is to do everything I can to make their retirement as easy and as enjoyable as possible. And it's something I'm proud of. I'm also really proud of my ability to apply the lessons of Wayne Dyer and Steve Covey in a personal and professional life. These motivational speakers often say, what you believe you can create. And this has happened in my life. And my trainer, Don Ash, actually taught me this lesson in a completely different language. He said, sit down and come up with a dollar figure that you want to achieve this year. It's always a lot easier to have a goal crystallized in your mind. So at that time, I sat down and said, $5,000 a month. And I spent a day daydreaming about it and what it would feel like and what it would look like if I actually had it. And I got emotional about it. And I thought how proud I would be of myself, how proud my family would be of me, and how much I'd be able to offer them if I did this. And in just 3 months, I was making $5,000 a month. It was more money than I'd made in my life up to that point. And it showed to me firsthand the power of intention. So a year later, I sat down and increased my goal to $10,000 a month. And within 3 months, I was making that. Then I said $20,000 the third year, and I did it. And for some reason, I still don't know, is I never thought about it again for 10 years later. I must have been satisfied or thinking nothing was possible. But it struck me, and I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to think $40,000 this year. Within 3 months, I was making 40, just as easy as I did the others. 3 years, it took me 3 years after the 40 to believe 80 was possible. I was very conscious I wanted to do it. I just didn't think it was possible. So last year, at the council in Colorado Springs, I sat down and thought about $80,000 that day. And I made it. Within 3 months, I made it. That's what I'm making now. And that's what I'm making up to this month. I've always made what I've envisioned, no more, no less, which is kind of unusual, until last year. Now I think anything is possible. There's no glass ceilings for me anymore. And this is the formula of how it works. You focus on a goal, the end result, the pot of gold, and all that goes with that. And that day you don't think about how, just what it would feel like to have it. And days later you'll start coming up with ideas. You'll remember suggestions that people have given you. Or you pay attention to that little whisper in your ear that tells you that something to do that you would otherwise ignore. I started taking action on things that I should have done or could have done sooner. I began seriously marketing myself with newspaper ads and billboards, making flyers, dropping off newsletters, or going to waiting rooms and leaving articles, or just hanging out and talking to folks. Every time I told myself I'm too tired or I'm not capable, I started taking action. Suddenly these tasks were not chores anymore. It's called the mood of ambition, and it's a powerful mood to be in. In addition to trying new things, I began organizing my daily activities. I realized the importance of small steps and discipline. I set up rules for myself. And here's one. Every day, I call 20 of my clients. If I get behind, I'll call 30 to catch up. I start from A and I go to Z. Of all the things you hear from me, this is the most productive, makes me the most money, and best of all, it's free. Staying connected to people in an honest dialogue is the best way to accomplish the sweetness of life. I had a chance to talk to Ted a few weeks ago. It was one of the things I wanted to do for winning this, is talk to some of the CEOs of this company and find out what really makes them tick. And I asked for a couple of core beliefs that are fundamental to his success. And my takeaway was this: stay connected to people, be genuine, study and prepare so you can stay focused in the moment. And for me, I appreciate that. And this is an example of vibrating a desire to learn. And people just show up in my life with the offer to teach. And that is what happened in all the domains of my life. Clear vision, things seem to show up for me. I'm also committed myself to spending at least 15 minutes a day with a pencil in my hand, coming up with new marketing or prospecting ideas. Even if I don't have ideas, I stay with it. I time myself. For 15 minutes, I'm going to sit here and try to be creative. It's very frustrating sometimes. I spend another 15 minutes thinking about who I want to get in front of, or who might help me find someone I'd like to see. And I write a list of names down, and I go talk to these people. I stick to this routine no matter how I feel, no matter if I'm having a good day or a bad day. And those 15 minutes a day have really led me to a bunch of wonderful ideas and higher sales. I achieve every single one of my goals because I sit down, daydream what it would look like if I already had it. And this clear vision ignites my creativity, and it steels my resolve to have it. If you tell yourself it's impossible, you're right. If you tell yourself you could do it, you're right. It's your choice. Another way I like to challenge myself is by asking, what am I willing to fail for? Am I about living, or am I about dying? Am I about excellence or resignation? If